Hi, it's Ron with Texas LTC Gun Safety Central. Wanted to talk a bit about something that is one of the key elements of being a successful shooter, no matter what kind of shooting you're trying to do, and that is grip, how we actually hold the handgun. Why is grip important? Other than, of course, that's how we actually hold the weapon. Well, before I show you what the proper grip is, I want to explain why the grip is important by just talking about, well, what happens to the gun when we fire it, when we pull the trigger, right? And this is, of course, the toy gun, as you can see. And so when we pull the trigger, that slide reciprocates back. Of course, a bullet comes out of here, and it makes the gun want to jump backwards, right? If it didn't have hands or anything around it, if you just pulled the trigger, the gun would jump up and backwards, okay? So our grip is there to keep the gun from jumping up and backwards out of our hands, right? That's what good grip does. It gives us control of the gun. The proper way to grip a handgun is with our shooting hand. I'm going to use my left hand, right? We're going to bring it in and put the web of our hand into what's called the beaver tail area. That's what this area right here is. Made for the web of your hand just to fit right into and right up against the skin. You want to be right on that skin. That's where that belongs, right? Now, what to do with the fingers, okay? This gives me a little bit of control over the gun, just barely, right? But the fingers, okay? So 3 of them are going to wrap around the handle, the grip, the pistol grip of the gun, and the index finger, the trigger finger, does not go in the trigger well, not until we're ready to fire, of course, right? The 4 rules of gun safety. But it goes instead on the frame, up along the frame of the gun. That's where the index finger, the trigger finger goes. The other fingers are wrapped around, and the thumb up inside that beaver tail, right? The thumb just sort of naturally comes around. But the thumb's going to move. That's a one-handed grip, okay? How we can shoot the gun one-handed. Most of our shooting is going to be two-handed, and so what we want to do is fill up this real estate that's right here on the gun. So I'm going to move my thumb out of the way to make a little more room for this hand to come in, and I'm going to I want to get this part of the palm of my hand right below my thumb, and I'm going to have it make contact with the exposed part of the grip. Okay, so here's my proper one-handed grip. Here's the exposed area. I'm bringing this part of my hand right up against it. And then, now these fingers can all wrap under the trigger guard, not over it. You can shoot this way. It takes a little practice, but let's for now just all the fingers underneath the trigger guard, wrapped around, my palms in contact, and that is the grip, except the thumbs. What to do with these guys? These are the tricky ones, right? So normally in a one-handed grip, my thumb's right there, and there's even a little space for it, okay? But to bring my other hand in, I have to move that thumb, bring this other hand up, make contact. Now this thumb, my support hand thumb, the hand that's not pulling the trigger, that's the support hand, that's going to come around, and the thumb makes contact with the frame. On this side, my index finger is contacting the frame. On this side, my support hand thumb is touching the frame, and my shooting hand, one with the trigger finger, that thumb just sits on top of my support thumb. And that's it. That is a proper grip. It is this grip that will give you control over the recoil forces the gun wants to recoil. But this part right here is going to be crucial, and that is, do we have our hand and that webbing specifically all the way up in there? Because if we don't, something starts to happen that we don't want, and that is, we'll see if we can trigger one here, malfunctions, right? Malfunctions happen if we have a gap in between that beaver tail and the webbing of our hand. So let's talk about that. If I don't make proper contact with that webbing of my hand up in here, right? What's going to happen is that as I fire the gun, this gap here, it acts like a lever, right? So the gun, as it recoils, wants to just jump like this inside my hands, even if I have a proper, or try to get a proper grip on it. Although it's hard to grip the gun properly if your shooting hand is too low on the gun, all right? It's hard to get your finger up into the trigger. So it's designed for that webbing to be up in there, all right? What happens if we do not have that contact when we pull the trigger is that the gun malfunctions. And what that looks like is something like this. We call this a stovepipe. Again, this is a dummy round, but this is called a stovepipe. And that's where the slide did not reciprocate all the way, and it catches the ejecting brass as it's going out, all right? If we don't have a proper grip where we're all the way up against there, let me go back to our other prop gun here, right? If I'm not all the way up against there, then the gun doesn't have enough force against it to let the slide go back. The shells get caught up. So essentially what happens is that your semi-automatic gun turns into a single shot gun, because every time you try to shoot, if you're down low, not enough energy to cycle it, so you've got to clear the malfunction, get the gun back in service, go out and shoot again. Guess what? Malfunction. This alone, getting that beaver tail up against the web of your hand and getting those fingers wrapped around with the thumb of the support hand on the frame and the thumb of your shooting hand over that thumb, right? This grip will give you control of the gun. And so now that we have these mechanics of our grip down correctly, the question becomes, how tightly do we hold on to the gun? We want control of it, but if we grip it too tightly, we induce a shake in the gun, especially with our shooting hand, because it has the most contact of all, right? It's covering the most area. So if we grip this really tightly, trying to hold on to it, right? You can see I'm really exaggerating here, but I'm gripping it tightly. It makes my arm shake, okay? Well, that happens to your hand if you're over exerting on the gun. And don't forget, you've got a support hand also that's coming in. So what do we want to do? What's the balance that we need to get so that we've got control and the gun doesn't jump out of our hand, but we don't start and induce shaking in the gun and in our hands because we're holding it too tight, white knuckle, that's not what we want to do. I like to use this analogy. Our shooting hand, the one that has the most contact with the gun, should be holding the gun somewhat like you would a glass of, let's say, iced tea at the obligatory backyard barbecue, right? Cup like this, really flimsy, okay? Just one of those. Then you put liquid in it. Of course, it was iced tea, but it's Texas and the ice melted and it's just liquid, so it's really precarious, right? And you've got to hold that, have conversation. Maybe you got a plate of food or a grandkid running around, whatever, right? You can hold that without over squeezing, because if you hold it too tight, the liquid all jumps right out. That's a mess. But you can do that, and you can walk around, you can open doors, you could do all, sit down, get up. You can do all of that and still maintain control of the cup without squeezing it too hard to cause, well, disaster. All right. That's the grip that we assume with this. We have full contact with it. We have full control over it. But we're not squeezing it, right? Because we're not trying to, it's not a grape. We're not trying to get juice out of it. We just got control of it. Now this hand's holding a cup of tea. This hand, we're extending out our shooting hand, or our support hand. We're extending out as if we're shaking a hand. That's the amount of pressure that we're going to put here. Not a firm handshake, just a handshake. That's all it takes. Holding tea, handshake, thumbs aligned, index finger. That's how we grip a handgun to be the best possible shot that you can be. Tune in again. We'll see you next time.